Is it possible for a game to make a stronger first impression than Arctic Eggs? The game begins with the mysterious twang of guitar strings. You're in some kind of chicken factory. You walk between dimly lit rows of caged hens, approaching a shadowy figure kitted out in combat armor, holding a gun. A guard, maybe? At first you notice his face, some kind of distortion that just doesn't look right. You engage with them and the eternal question arises. The question that will haunt your days and plague your nights. The question that holds enough weight to topple empires just in the asking of it. Can you fry eggs on top of Mount Everest? You play as a nameless poultry prepper, someone equipped with a frying pan who walks around this dismal, cold, futuristic urban jungle, ready on a moment's notice to cook eggs and other food for anyone who's hungry. But why? Well, you'll quickly learn that you're some kind of hopeless captive, but if you can feed enough people, you'll get an audience with the entity in charge, delightfully named the Saint of Six Stomachs, and they have the power to liberate you, and perhaps you'll finally gain insight into the possibility of cooking eggs on the tallest peak in the world. This is the crazy premise of Arctic Eggs, a cooking simulator that starts out weird and then just keeps turning it up. It's never really explained what's going on, but it's clear it's not great. The environment is uniformly bleak and grey, framed on all sides by giant concrete monoliths that disappear down into the gloom. The apocalypse forms a kind of background layer to the game, but various snippets of dialogue hint at it obliquely, making it feel like the game has a large scope. Characters talk about some sort of war. They mention countries Argentina and Poland. Something has definitely gone down, but the game doesn't spend a lot of time dwelling on exactly what went wrong, and it doesn't have to. The real dystopian horror here is obviously that there are no kitchen utensils. The core of the game is of course cooking eggs. For this you get a miraculously slippery pan. It's as if instead of advancing society, humankind's top scientists just spent the last 100 years perfecting Teflon to be an entirely friction-free cooking surface. You drop ingredients into the pan, and the physics fun ensues. You'll use the mouse to slide the food around the pan. When one side is done, you have to flick your wrist to turn them over and cook the other side. If any of the food falls out of the pan, you've failed, and you have to start over. While this is a relatively simple affair at first, the game ramps things up by adding, well, apparently whatever it likes to the pan. You'll fry things that your mind has never before associated with the bottom of a frying pan, and each incongruous ingredient has its own unique physics behavior that switches up the challenge, keeping it novel. The physics model feels good. It's evident they spend a good amount of time fine-tuning their core gameplay mechanic to nail the sweet spots. The dexterous little wrist flicks and fry shaking action have a strong parallel to how it kind of feels in real life. Depending on the ingredients you're given, it can end up feeling unfairly frustrating. But if it's all just a little too punishing or easy for you, there are 3 different difficulty levels that you can change at any time without being judged. I will say that finally succeeding the fry challenge on the 9th attempt really feels like a true accomplishment, probably on a par with graduating from college. The graphics are precisely odd enough to nail the aesthetic they're going for, which I'm assuming is unreal, post-apocalyptic Antarctic prison chic. I love how the deliberately weird character models conform perfectly to this world vibe. At times it feels like Pablo Picasso made this game. The characters' large, dead eyes are what deer must look like the second before they're mown down by an oncoming car. And I love the clumsy pixelated textures and how the graphics just appear to gently ripple all the time for no apparent reason, as if you're somehow, for some reason, underwater. I also really like the way the camera shifts during NPC dialogue, and how the fonts look as they hug the contours of in-game surfaces. These presentation choices gave the game an unexpected elevation and polish that contrasted well with the lo-fi, low-poly aesthetic. I was struck how many times the game looked like a kind of surrealist postcard sent back from a dark future. While at first it may seem like the pervasive weirdness is just some sort of attempt at avant-garde edginess, I think that it does in fact serve a greater purpose than that. Let me explain by bringing up Terry Gilliam's 1985 movie Brazil. There's a similar absurdity in that dystopian future, and the black comedy surrealism employed in the movie is a way of reacting to the meaninglessness of the characters' lives. Similarly here in Arctic Eggs, when faced with the mundane brutality of a bleak Antarctic dystopia, The only way the characters can respond and express themselves is through absurdist humour. It's the same way the Dadaist art movement in the early 20th century reacted to the horrors of an apathetic universe after the First World War, and it's been argued how, more currently, Gen Z and millennials are reacting to their disillusionment. The game frequently shifts with ease from the mundane to the sublime, from flippant, lowbrow humour to deep philosophical musings. 1 minute, characters are talking about cooking with toilet water, the next, speaking abstractly with an unexpected weighty lyricism, like suddenly enlightened monks or beat poets who just dropped acid. It juxtaposes the common with the bizarre as if they've always belonged together, and that's why you'll find yourself frying eggs with tinned fish. And then a weird kind of thing happens as you play the game. Even though you start as a kind of tourist, laughing at all the surreal weirdness around you, you eventually slip comfortably into the vibe, less of an onlooker and more a part of the world. You take it in your stride, and the weirdness becomes a second skin. The music is a good example of this effect. At the outset, it felt hilariously out of place. It's got a lot of upbeat, light jazz funk that feels straight out of the rainbow-soaked vistas of Katamari Damacy, not the bleak, frigid atmosphere of Arctic eggs. But by the time I'd fried my 13th egg, the catchy bass hooks had wormed their way into my mind to become the perfect musical tapestry to this game. And now, of course, I can't stop listening to it. You quickly learn to stop asking questions and just accept the surreal parade of what the fuck falling into your frying pan. Not long after being asked to fry your first egg, you're asked to cook an egg with a cigarette, because it adds a good flavour, of course. But the trick is you have to finish cooking the egg before the cigarette burns down, because why the hell not? It's a massively odd and hugely contrived gameplay conceit, and the game only gets stranger after that, because I guess if you're going to take a walk to Weird Town, you might as well spend the whole day there, right? Yeah, there's a lot to like about this game, and I wish to hell that more game developers were making imaginative output like this. I mean, video games as a medium aren't anchored down by the relatively narrow constraints of other media, so why not go all out and make delightfully oddball games inspired by your fever dream hallucinations for everyone to enjoy? Why do video games have to take themselves so seriously? It's a short game that's over just about as soon as it starts, and that's probably just as well because it's kind of a one-game mechanic kind of pony, and I'm glad they didn't stretch it out longer than necessary. The devs recently added a sandbox mode that's available if you manage to get 100% in the main game, so the option's always there if you're some kind of maniacal glutton for punishment. Arctic Eggs is the Antarctic, post-apocalyptic, surrealist, dystopian, egg-based indie cooking simulator you didn't know you needed in your life, until now. And if you don't play it, well, just ask yourself this. Is the life where you never examine whether or not you can fry an egg on top of Mount Everest even worth living?